where there's no votes, but it's so safe for one side or the other, you can be confident. And I'm sorry, that's the current chamber. Let me go to the seats that have been won. Before Labor thought they had 72 seats there. Labor's on 34, the Coalition is on 68, Greens yet to win a seat because Melbourne, we've no figures for Melbourne, and others to come. That's the one, which I've hit the button again, first fail for the night, have the first drink, everyone. And likely is Labor on 37 seats, the Coalition's on 74, and others 1. We'll fill in our prediction at this stage, and we are seeing the Green seat, of course, isn't included in that prediction because we haven't got any figures at all. But we're seeing 93 seats to 56 for the Coalition. So that's not at the bottom end of some of the predictions that were going on. But there are still a lot of seats which are very close, and we'll be doing a lot of analysis of some of the seats in Western Sydney in the near future, particularly where there's a lot going on.
Now, Antony, based on your history of prediction and the computer's history of prediction in the past, how confident are you? We're reasonably close to this. How confident are you about how this is likely to match out against the reality?
I usually have a plus or minus figure on that. I've got a plus or minus 6 seats on that at the moment. So the Coalition is somewhere between 87 and 99. Labor is somewhere between 50 and 62. So it's a pretty confident prediction.
So Stephen Smith, is that closer to 77 or 96?
It's closer to 96. If we end up...
That is 1996 when Paul Keating lost to John Howard. Yes, let us just make that very clear.
Depending upon the age of the person I'm speaking to, when I talk about 1996 or when I talk about 96 or 75/77, I've got to clarify I'm talking about years, not number of seats, but you're old enough to understand.
I am, sadly.
But look, if we end up with a number of seats with a 5 in front of it, then I'll be pleased at the end of the night.
What a terrible admission.
Well, we ended up... on that, after 96, we ended up with 50-odd seats, and then one short election later, we were back in the game. I've got a theory now about Australian elections, which is always honoured in the breach. I think the natural term of office in Australia, particularly now that the states have moved to 4-year terms, is 2 elections, and after that, either the opposition has to be inadequate or there have got to be extraordinary circumstances for the government to get a 3rd term. Now, that's more often than not honoured in the breach, but the Liberal Party's political capital starts to go downhill from tonight. If you've got 50 seats, you've got a basis of a good shadow ministry, you've got the basis of being a viable act, and you can then march on for the future. I was worried when we first came in that we might be looking at a figure with a 4 in front of it.
Arthur Sinodinos, I don't know that you'll be too fussed to hear Stephen Smith saying it's all downhill from here. It could be a very long hill.
Yeah, it could be, and it could be getting close to 1996, and we'll take that. We're happy to take that.
You'll settle for 96.
But look, there's been a lot of focus on the House of Reps, and I would say this because I'm a senator, but I think to the challenge that Stephen is throwing out there about the political capital of a potential new government, the fact of the matter is, unless the new government gets close to balance in the Senate, I think the story of what's going on in Australia still has some way to go. We're not suddenly back to some era of quiet majority government. It's going to be quite a volatile time.
So what's your gut feeling about the Senate?
Look,
is it possible to have a gut feeling given the number of candidates scattered across the countryside?
Well, look, if our primary vote holds up in New South Wales, for example, we should be able to get 3 up, which would be great in my gut.
I should explain that Arthur Sinodinos is number 3 on the Liberal ticket.
Don't tell anyone, Arthur, but given the person who might knock you off, I'm actually in favour of that.
Yeah, thanks. But the Palmer Party have surprised me with their vote across the country in the reps, and I think that will translate into the Senate. And so, whereas we were looking at Katter, particularly in Queensland, as being the one who might benefit, I'm not sure now. But what I'm saying is, I think...
How are you going to cut your cloth to make Clyde Palmer happy?
Well, a fascinating Senate.
I'd actually rather deal with them and with, say, Nick Xenophon and Madigan than with the Greens, because the issue with the Greens is, and I think this has affected the current government, is that they foisted a lot of their agenda on the current government, and I think that has been to the detriment of the current government more so than anybody else, I reckon.
OK, we're going to keep you in touch with the figures as they roll in, but as we've said, there is clearly a change of government. It's just by how much is the issue, but a lot is the general answer. I'm now going to cross back to Tony Jones with Tanya Plebiscik and Concetta Fear of Anti Wells.
Yeah, and Connie, Antony Green has called it. Are you now prepared to take the risk to say the coalition has won the election?
Well, it's certainly looking very promising, Tony, but I'll wait a little bit longer.
Tanya Plibersek?
Oh, look, I am a cautious person by nature, but I think that it's pretty clear. It's a matter of the size of the victory.
Yes, and in terms of individual seats, Lindsay, we've talked about as a bellwether in Western Sydney, David Bradbury, I think you now believe is gone, is that right?
Oh, look, sadly I do. I mean, I think
that's a campaign headquarters message.
A fantastic person, ran a great campaign, has made a wonderful contribution to the parliament, but on the numbers as they look at the moment, I don't think they're bad.
Bad for you and good for us.
So are you now prepared to say how many seats you think you've already lost in New South Wales?
Look, I would say, I don't know about how many we've declared lost, but I would reckon that we will lose around 9 in New South Wales.
Can you take a quick run through the ones you think have gone?
Well, actually what I'd rather do is talk to you about some of the ones that might be surprises around the edges.
Well, okay, well, yes, we did talk about whether there'd be any bright lights at the end of the tunnel for Labor.
Well, I think Stephen mentioned Solomon, and I think that Solomon is an outside chance. Melbourne is the seat that I'm watching very closely as well. We were a bit worried how the Liberal Party preferences would flow between the Greens and Labor, and it looks like about 80% of Liberal preferences are coming to Labor, so I'm hopeful that we might win Melbourne back.
So Adam Bant, Deputy Leader of the Greens, would be gone in those circumstances?
In that case, yeah. Very slim outside chance, but one I'm watching closely as well is Gilmore, because you've got a retiring member there. Some of the ones that have come in as very unusual potentially, Clive Palmer, a chance in Fairfax. Alex Sommerley, very popular sitting member there, is retiring as well. I mean, I would be surprised if that happened at the end of the day, but the early counting has him with a very strong show. And
can I just ask, Connie, are you getting the same message on Clive Palmer?
That would be very surprising because, I mean, Alex, it's been quite a while that we've known that Alex is going, so that's sort of been in place for quite some time. It might be just some early figures.
It could be early figures, could be small booths, but that would make things interesting. And Alex is just a delightful human being. I think his personal vote would have been a very strong one there.
Can I just bring us to Tasmania, because Antony Green showed us the early state swings, and Tasmania was the biggest, 11.1%. What message are you getting from the party headquarters about the swing in Tasmania? Because a swing like that would take out most of your seats.
Yeah, look, the early figures I had was about a 10.5% swing against us in Tasmania. That obviously worries me terribly.
Well, that would take out Bass, Braddon, Franklin would be in danger, and Lyons, we've been hearing, could be in danger.
Quite often the early figures are small booths. The small booths would predominantly be country booths, so I think we'll do better in larger city booths. So I don't think it will end up being a 10.5% swing, but that is it's a large swing, and I think, I mean, the state government down there has been struggling as well. I think there's a bit of a washover between state and federal figures down there.
Yes, Connie, what do you think's happening in Tasmania?
Look, I think the Green-Labor alliance at the state level is going to affect definitely the vote there. It's about jobs, it's about economic growth down in Tasmania. Look, when you look at the 3 seats, I think that are very much Bass and Braddon are in play, and also Lyons. I mean, Andrew Nikolic has very good candidate and has run an exceptional campaign, as has Brett Whiteley. But Eric Hutchinson in Lyons, he was the candidate last time, and let's not forget, he took almost 4% off Dick Adams last time. So he's just continued to campaign in the intervening period. But certainly the message at the state level has been very, very helpful to them. I think we're really seeing in Tasmania the Green-Labor alliance working to the detriment of the Tasmanian people, and I think that that's washing through the federal
I think
perspective.
What you'd have to say about this is if this is indeed an indicator of what the result's like, it is a proof that if the swing's on, the swing's on, because I would say they're 3 of our best local members, Sid Sidebottom, Jeff Lyons and Dick Adams, incredibly hardworking, very popular.
At a general point, the federal government would have to take away, or former federal government, as we now must call it, Green Labor alliances just don't seem to work for voters.
Well,
I'm going to have to leave you there. We'll come back to you on that, and we'll speak to you both later.